Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to 2023 and Reality Bites with Nikki Connors. This is where we look behind the headlines and what's going on and what the true, I suppose, explanation or what is behind the news and whether it's false or how we see it. So this month, there's quite a few headlines that we're going to talk about and a number that I've been asked about. So first of all, obviously, it's Jacinda resigning. What is that going to do for property investors? How is that going to impact on us? The next thing that we're going to talk about is interest rates. We've had a drop in an interest rate at the moment as of yesterday, so we're going to talk about that and our predictions for the future because this is in everyone's mind, obviously, and whether property prices are going to drop to the levels that are being predicted in the press. So we're going to get through a lot. We've got 3/4 of an hour at the end of this, questions and answers. But if you've got something that's relevant and you want to ask from our conversation today, then certainly ask them and we'll be able to respond straight away. But first of all, I'd like to introduce you to my guest today. Graham Odens is the director and head of OV Homes in Canterbury. Graham builds nearly 100 houses every year, and this year alone, he's predicting to build over $90 million worth of housing in Canterbury to meet the demand for homeowners and for investors. Hello, Graham from Christchurch. It's nice to see you.
Hi, Nikki. Great to see you again.
Nice to see you, and I know that you've had a great break. So let's get straight into it. Jacinda leaving. Now, I suppose, first of all, it's not going to make much of a difference at the moment. But, of course, we've got the elections in October. And, Graham, what's your view to how you see this affecting investors, property investors?
Well, I think it's good news for property investors. It leaves the door really wide open for National now to come back in, who have been traditionally good fans and supporters of landlords as far as taxation policy. I think you're totally correct. There's not going to be anything major within the next few months, but leading up to the election, we're going to see some of the major parties with their policies, especially around property tax, depreciation, whether that comes back in. Either way, I think National will come out very strongly in support of landlords and make it more attractive to become property investors.
When you look at the what has happened with the Labor government over the time that Jacinda's been in, and we're looking at social housing and the homeless, I mean, it's been a pretty dismal failure, hasn't it? I mean, we've not seen the levels of housing that have been promised, but at the same time that they've vilified property investors, where to me it just seems crazy when you've got mum and dad investors who are looking to secure their own future, not to rely on the government, but also giving that supply of housing that is so desperately needed. Do you think that they're going to see that there is some benefit of supporting us to win the next election, or do you think that they're going to remain staunch to their attitude that property investors are not they're not in the best interest of the country?
I think if Labor is going to have any chance in the elections, they're going to drastically change a few of their policies, one primarily being around property investment. New Zealand suffers from such a major lack of properties for rental purposes that the government needs to step in and make it attractive and make it easy and provide tax advantages for those people that are willing to actually put capital up to actually help our country through this issue.
No, and of course, what we forget as well, that the building industry and development is very big in this country. It relies on a lot of subcontractors. And I know that with your building, how many people that it takes and how many people you employ. I mean, once again, this is part of the fabric of of New Zealand small businesses as well. And so it just seems to me to be a very elegant solution all around to be able to support housing and building going forward.
Yeah, when you look at family income and where it's derived from in New Zealand, I mean, tourism was always such a big earner for New Zealand families, but with COVID, that sort of dropped away and now opening up. The construction industry is responsible for, I'd say, that one of the leading categories of providing family income, as well as providing a solution to our housing crisis. So why isn't the government getting behind? And I think National see this and they're going to jump right on it. Labor, to stay in the running, are going to have to do something similar.
Yeah, and just to put it, just so that everyone's aware, in the National Manifesto, they're talking about changing the bright line. It's not so relevant to my clients who purchase brand new properties, because the bright line on brand new properties is 5 years, but for older properties, it's 10. Still, Graham, we remember when the bright line was 2 years, which was...
just from my law practice, I've had clients that have been hit with taxation on properties with 3 and 4 years before. So I guess in general, there was no strict rule of thumb in relation to the bright line, and that the department and the commissioner can always come in and tax where they see it's deemed directly for a profit. I guess we're both in the business and with property investment for long-term holds. That's Absolutely. Where everyone gets their gains. They get the capital gain. They're building brand new properties with no maintenance issues. So they're in there for the long run. So the market will always show a capital gain for those long-term holders.
And that brings us back to the other point as well about property prices. So what we've seen over, I suppose, since 2021 is that across the board, property prices have gone down by just over 13%. Not in Christchurch, but we'll come to that a bit later. I've just got to remind my clients as well that, remember, you don't lose on a property unless you sell it at the wrong time. And my clients, and yes, investors are typically in it for the long term. And we've enjoyed, I suppose, growth and capital gain of up to 30% over the last couple of years. So if we're looking at that an average of, say, 20% drop or 10 or 15% drop, we're still going to see property prices rise. But let's get back to brand new property, because this is something that I always talk about and have to reinforce, is the fact that brand new property just can't go down in value. And this is why it's good that you're here today, Graham, because from your point of view, because you're building 3 and 4 bedroom houses and settling these every single week. What yes, at the moment, we've got valuations that I suppose valuers are trying to be as in this market, that keeping the valuations down a bit. But going forward, how do you see the purchasing and the pricing and the value of new builds?
Yeah, so we've seen some valuers actually value a little bit light here in Canterbury over the last sort of 4 months. I guess you've got to take that as a snapshot in time. There have been a couple of cheap properties that have affected what they do. But once again, it's a snapshot in time. In 3 months' time, they're going to value higher when all these other sales that are currently being finished complete. So you're really looking at a snapshot in time with those values. If you're in the property for a long term, so 5+ years, you will not lose money on a new build.
No. And the reality is, and you and I were talking about this, and going into the nitty-gritty of building a property. And let's look at your experience in Canterbury, for instance. So I've had clients that have come back and said, well, we've been told that land values have dropped over the last 4 to 5 months. which means that then the property prices should be lower, but that's not the case. And once again, as you said, that is a snapshot of what's happening. So put it into perspective for us, Graham.
Okay, well, I guess when you're looking at the property values, it's really governed by three key factors for new builds. You're looking at your land price, your construction cost, and then the demand. With land, yes, in the last 4 or 5 months, we've seen probably about a 7% drop on new subdivisions. But talking to all the key developers here in Christchurch, they're not dropping any further. So there might be a 30 to 40,000 drop in at the peak of what the sections were to where they are now. So let's say $30,000 have dropped off the land price. Now look at the construction price. So construction goes, if you look at your subbies and then suppliers. Currently, there's a shortage of subbies here in Christchurch. So they're demanding whatever price they want so that builders can get them on site. That is not going to drop within the next year. Suppliers are currently turning away builders for frame and truss work, windows and roofs. So once again, they can nominate price. So we're not going to see any drop as far as those two components. The big thing is freight costs with labour and bringing back in the road user charges. It works out for every sort of 100,000 kilometres a truck is on the road, it costs the owner of the truck around about $22,000. 93% of all construction materials are by truck and on the road. So we're calculating that the price increases for freight alone are going to be between $21,000 and $26,000 a house. Oh. That pretty much eats up the loss or the decrease in land. The third component, and this is the key one, is demand. We're currently around about 5,000 properties short in the Canterbury area. So Canterbury and Selwyn.
You're saying, and this is, are you saying house and land, or you're saying across with townhouses and units?
Primarily house and land. Mm-hmm. The townhouses that are coming out are predominantly 2 bedrooms, no garaging. They're going to be very hard to move and not suitable for families. The net migration into Canterbury, and this is where we've seen with values in the main territories in New Zealand, that over the last year, we've seen sort of Auckland drop by 5%, Wellington by 17%, Dunedin by 10%. Canterbury's actually risen by 1% just because we've got this demand. And that demand is not going to go away because we've still got so many people coming in. I've had clients calling me going, can you find us a rental? Because they're signing up and the 35, 40 people applying for every property.
Well, we're seeing that as well as our clients settle on their 3 and 4 bedroom properties, that the property management companies have a lot of choice of who's going to be able to go into that. Going back to the drop in the price of land, why do you think that was, and how long do you think that's going to last?
It's already over. The big developers, they may have put out 10, 15 sections each at a slightly discounted price just to clear those stages. Now they're just going to be sitting on them. I guess it's not a price drop. What we're seeing is a price correction. Section prices in Canterbury were way too cheap for so long. Mm-hmm. Now they're pretty much sitting where I think they should be. So around about sort of $330,000 a section.
Yeah.
But when they were at $180,000, $190,000 out at Rolleston,
those were the days, but that wasn't that long ago either, was it?
And this is where we're dealing with valuers, because valuers are dealing with completed sales where they're dealing with sections that were at that 180, 190,000. So they might value a place at 700, which was sold at 750 or 750 to 800. Mm. But it's a snapshot in time because those sections went up to 450,000. So when those houses are being completed, which are rolling in from now over the next 3 months, then we'll see the valuers will actually have that proven course of sales showing that the sales are at a much higher level.
Yeah.
So once again, those values will stack up, but it's just this snapshot in time where we're dealing with some of the cheaper sections.
And of course, it's the same with rents as well, because the rentals that we're getting are based on built properties that were built 5-10 years ago, and their value as well. And of course, as the demand becomes higher, the value of the property is greater, then the rentals are going to go up. So I always say, yes, the rentals are lagging behind, that balance between the purchase price. But, you know, if you're looking at house and lands in Canterbury, I think that it's a very solid investment. I suppose at the moment, the big thing is going back to what you're saying with valuers that are valuing properties, say, $50,000 less than what the client originally paid for it. We've got to look at ways in which our clients can settle on those properties, because as you said, this is just for a very short time. And my view is that whether it's the cost of the build, there is still the demand. We still haven't opened up our borders enough. And there is that chronic shortage that we are going to see the demand and those prices start rising. And of course, once again, I'm talking about new builds, but I'm also talking about units as well and townhouses, because it's the same scenario, that the cost of building is not going to go down. And despite what we're reading in the papers, and this is why we go behind the headlines, because I'm doing this every single day, we're not seeing huge discounts on these properties that are coming from developers going forward, because in most cases, the margins are so small anyway, and they've got to future-proof the build. And with my clients, when they sign a contract, and of course, we have a lot of clients that have got properties with yourself, Graham, and they've signed a contract for house and land. One of the things that we insist on is that the price that our clients pay today is the price that they will settle on. So, you know, if you're talking 12 months away or 8 months away, what is the typical build, and what is that increase in the building price in that time?
Yeah. So I guess when I price a home, we're sort of calculating what we believe will include any price increases. We've seen massive increases over the last year that haven't been forecast. That's the key with getting a builder that offers you a full fixed price contract there's no extras, whether hidden or otherwise. What you pay or sign up for today is the price that you pay when the house is finished. So many building companies out there have got different mechanisms how they can increase the price, if it's delayed or sunset clauses, and we just don't believe in that. And that gives certainty. So when people are getting funding, they can go to a bank and go, no, this is a fixed price. So everything is included, so tenants can move in the day you settle.
Yeah. So when we're looking at the scenario at the moment with what can you do to settle on that property if a valuer comes back and said that it's $50,000 less than what you originally paid for, the first thing that we say is do not panic and try and sell that property. It's doing what you can to settle on that property, and then looking at over the next 6 to 8 months, your situation, and then what is going to work for you and what is happening in the market as well. So, Graham, you and I were talking about this beforehand. It's, for instance, if you've got to use a little bit more equity in your home, on a brand new build, it's 20% deposit, which is 20% guaranteed against equity in another property. So one of the things is to look at using more equity. Borrowing from a bank that has that will give the purchase price as the price now, rather than a valuation. So I mean, that's not happening as much today. But are you seeing that some of your clients are going to those banks, Graham?
Yeah, I guess we're seeing major difficulties with how banks have been operating pretty much in the last 6 months with changes with OCR and interest rates. If you're not happy with your bank, use a broker. The broker will find the best place for you where your deal will get approved. Now, sometimes those deals may not come through from a first tier lender, like one of your major trading banks. But often you can get a better deal or a deal that'll suit your personal needs from a second tier lender, which will help you ride out just this short period of time between when the value has valued it low to where it should be.
And of course, yeah, and we always recommend a mortgage broker. We always say, don't go to the banks yourself in that to work with a particular bank. You need to see what all of the options are in the banks. But as we said, avoid at all costs selling that at a loss, because we're talking a few months. And I've done this myself. I've gone to second tier lenders for a short-term loan. And yes, in some cases it's a lot higher, but the capital growth outweighs that extra that I have to pay on that property.
And given often we're looking at maybe a 2 to 3 month window here with the value. And so I'd rather pay 1% or 1.5% higher interest for 2 months rather than walk away from a deposit or create a loss for myself.
Yeah.
It's just a no-brainer, because you're not going to lose, in my opinion, you're not going to lose money on a new build in Canterbury.
And I totally support that 100%. I think that all my clients that have bought house and land packages in Canterbury, who are buying 2-bedroom townhouses, as long as they've got car parks, are going to do very well going forward. And so this brings us back, when you're talking about interest rates as well, and where they're going. Now, I came out and said at the beginning of, towards the end of last year, when interest rates went up, that I believe that by the end of this year that we're going to see interest rates drop. What is your view on that?
I fully agree.
Yeah.
I fully agree. I heard the ASB economists who I've got a lot of time for saying that it's going to push up a little bit towards the middle of the year, maybe another 0.5% to a year, but then we're going to see some drops.
Well, it's interesting that you say that from the ASB, because the ASB have just come out with interest rates that have dropped for long term. So the 5-year interest rate's gone from 6.99 to 6.49. So what you're saying.
There you go. So it shows that they're actually putting the money where their mouth is. They can see the interest rates will be dropping over the middle to long term.
Right. And they want to protect their interests. So they want to lock you in for that 5 years. So let's make it a little bit more attractive.
Yeah.
I personally have just set 4 of my mortgages at 6 months, which is similar to the 1 year, and I'm going to review it again in 6 months' time. And I'm not saying that.
So I think once we get through, so come August, September, we're going to be seeing some major drops, I think.
Yeah,
and everything will be sub 5. I'd hope. I think it's going to be close to 4 again.
And the key is just getting through this at the moment. And one of the things that and I've said this in my last podcast as well, that working with a broker and some of the deals that they're able to get, I mean, I've been so gratified that we've got, I think, Graham, with yourself and your company, about 17 to 20 settlements that have come from December through to about March of this year. I think that's about right. And one of the things that we're looking at is how can we reduce the outgoings for our clients, the weekly outgoings on the property after the rental, until we do see those interest rates drop. And one of the things is that the banks are giving a contribution as well. So our mortgage broker has been getting a really quite a worthwhile contribution, $6,000.
Yeah, well, pretty much the average we're seeing coming through with our legal clients is sort of around that $5,000 to $7,000 on a deal, and so that covers this term through to where we see the interest rates dropping. That alone.
And of course, if there's any contribution that we can get in, from other areas as well. But if we're saying, and I say this to the clients, let's look at this next 12 months. So if you're going to get a contribution from the bank of that, say, let's just say $5,200. That's easy, isn't it? Yep. So that is $100 per week.
Yep.
So that is helping with your top up for that next year of $100 per week. So don't discount how we can look in the short term to be able to get you through until we're looking at an average. I mean, the average floating was in the mid fives, hasn't it been over the last 10 to 12 years, I think. And I see that going back to that.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Nikki. Yeah.
So is there, just now looking with questions, I'm sure there are regarding around the interest rates or bills. Have you got any questions there at the moment?
No questions at the moment, Nikki.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So
Must be clear as mud.
So let's then look at just at the bigger picture as well. Do we invest this year? I mean, this is the question. And of course, it's an election year. And so we always see that we've got mum and dad investors saying, well, do we wait? Do we wait until after the election? And I have to smile because even after the election, nothing changes. Yeah. Really. And in this case, it could be a positive. So if we're looking at if nothing changes at the moment, why should you look at investing now? And
well, I had this discussion at a dinner party on the weekend where they're saying when's the right time, and I think now is the right time, because if you're looking at putting a 10% deposit down now, not paying anything to completion, and on average that could be 10 or 12 months from when you pay, you're going to be riding out these interest rates, and you're going to be settling when the better interest rates are coming in. But keep in mind that over the next 8 months, I think we're going to see some pretty significant price increases from the construction side of the house and land package. So if you can lock in the price now, but you're not paying for it for 10 to 12 months, then you're avoiding those price increases, which is going to be pure capital gain, because they'll show in the values of the property.
And just for those who haven't invested before, one of the things that we do as Propellor with any investment property, that the holding cost is a 10% of the value of the property. So what the mortgage broker will do for you, and most of our clients don't have cash in the bank, so it's not like they can pull out 10% on a $600,000 unit, $60,000. So the mortgage broker borrows, gets a pre-approval for our clients. So we won't allow you to do anything until you've got a pre-approval from the bank for that lending, that you've spoken to your solicitors as well. But that $60,000 on a $600,000 build is an advance by the bank from the mortgage broker organizes. She also organizes another small percentage to take care of the interest costs of that $60,000. So over 12 months, as you were saying, Graham, for a build, and you can't get a house and land for $600,000, but that means that at let's just say at 6%, 6 sixes are 36. So it's going to cost you for $3,600. So you're borrowing about $64,000.
Yeah.
And then you walk away from that. You walk away from that. That $64,000 sits in a solicitor's trust account, can't be touched by Graham or whoever the developer is. And as Graham has said, what I like to see it as, it's a cab fare going tick, 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 tick. It's ticking away, and the value of that property that you purchased at $600,000 a year ago is going up. Now, as quite rightly, at the moment, there's a bit of flux. We've got the interest rates, but we are seeing signs that the interest rates are going to go down. And the biggest sign of that is when banks are trying to lock you in for a longer period of time at a lower interest rate. So we've got that. As Graham was saying as well, that the cost of building is going up quite substantially. You can't hide that. That's not theory, that's fact.
Yeah.
And Yeah.
And
So,
so
I mean,
if you look at it, as Nikki said, if it costs you $4,000 over that year for interest, think of that as a $4,000 investment, but you're probably going to save $35,000 to $40,000 of price increases you don't have to pay. So you've actually got a gain straight off the bat.
and that's one of the things that I do. I would rather have $60,000, for instance, as a deposit sitting in a solicitor's trust account for a property than having that $60,000 sitting in the bank. But here's the other thing. I may not necessarily have $60,000 sitting in the bank, but I do have $60,000 of equity in another property to guarantee that $60,000 that's going to make money for me.
That's exactly right.
So, Graham, thank you so much. I don't know if there's any questions now from that at all.
No questions there, Nikki.
Oh, wonderful! It looks like we've answered everything. Graham, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to seeing you when I'm back down in Christchurch.
I can't wait. Thanks so much for your time, Nikki.
No, it's been great. So for everyone else, if you want to find out more, remember that we've got senior advisors. The talking to them is free. Their consultation consultancy is free. Give us a call on 0800 81 81 91 or go to info@propellerproperties.co.nz. And a senior advisor will be speaking to you about how you can look at 2023 using some of the equity in your home to start the plan. Have a plan for 2023, and that plan is to have your mortgage paid off before you retire and or a passive income. So 0800 81 81 91 or info@propellerproperties.co.nz. Until next month, this is Nikki Connors with Reality Bites, and have a good month. Bye now.